Council, please come to order. Everyone would please stand. We'll be led in prayer by Alderman Mark Betancourt.
How you turn it on?
Oh, let him come over to Betsy's desk.
He's got it.
Almighty God, we ask for your blessing upon the members of this council as we assemble here in this chamber to conduct the ongoing business of our city. With your guidance, we will strive to ensure that all our decisions are for the common good, and your inspiration will instill respect, compassion, and thoughtfulness in all our deliberations. Give us the strength and wisdom to lead by example as the people's representatives, and that peace and harmony will mark all our proceedings and keep us faithful to the trust placed in us by the citizens of your community. Amen.
Amen. Alderman DeLucia, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. At this time, I'd ask for the adoption of the minutes of March 1st and 15th, 2021, please. Alderwoman Gould, second by Alderman Wilson. Is there discussion on the motion to adopt? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion is unanimous. Passes 6-0 at this time.
Proclamation, Autism Awareness Month.
I'm going to read a proclamation this evening, and I'll be followed by Alderman Nash. He has a second one. Whereas autism is a complex condition and developmental disability characterized by difficulties in the way a person communicates and interacts with other people, and whereas symptoms of autism may present themselves in a variety of combinations and can result in significant lifelong impairment of an individual's ability to learn, develop healthy interactive behaviors, and understand verbal and nonverbal communication. Whereas in the United States, autism affects 1 in every 110 children, and about 1 in 150 people in America have autism. And whereas Norwich is committed to ensuring that people living with autism have access to care and services needed to pursue their full potential and happiness. Whereas Norwich is honored to take part in the observance of Autism Acceptance Month in the hope that it will lead to a better understanding of the disorder. And whereas the puzzle ribbon is the symbol of autism awareness and is promoted by the Autism Society as means of supporting awareness for autism. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Peter Albert Nystrom, and Norwich City Council President Pro Tem Mark Betancourt, on behalf of the Norwich City Council and the citizens of the City of Norwich, do hereby recognize April 2021 as Autism Acceptance Month in the City of Norwich, and we ask our citizens of the Rose City to observe and learn about autism for the betterment for all our citizens. Dated this 5th day of April 2021, and signed by myself and President Pro Tem Mark Betancourt. Thank you. Alderman Nash.
Norwich Vietnam Veterans Proclamation.
Whereas the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 officially designated March 29th as Vietnam War Veterans Day annually, and whereas the war in Vietnam spanned a period of nearly 2 decades, lasting from November 1955 until April 1975, and whereas of the nearly 3 million American soldiers, sailors, and Marines who served, roughly 58,000 gave their lives for our nation's freedom. And whereas Norwich is honored to be the home of the courageous veterans who continue to serve as leaders in their communities, workplaces, and religious and civic organizations. And whereas many of our veterans bear permanent physical and mental scars from their time in the armed forces and continue to face neglect and mistreatment despite their stellar service. And whereas it is our duty in Norwich to honor and support the men and women who have put service before self, and whereas more than 3 million Americans served in Vietnam, more than 58,000 names are memorialized on the black granite wall in our nation's capital. 304,000 were wounded, 1,253 are missing in action, and 2,500 were prisoners of war. Whereas it is especially important that the extraordinary contributions of Norwich Vietnam veterans and the sacrifice of their families be remembered and recognized. Now, therefore, Mayor Peter Albert Nystrom and Norwich City Council President Pro Tem Mark Betancourt, on behalf of the Norwich City Council and the citizens of the City of Norwich, do hereby acknowledge the sacrifice of our Norwich Vietnam veterans and their service to America, dated this day, the 29th day of March, 2021.
Thank you, sir.
Public hearing. An ordinance amending Chapter 3 Special Districts by adding Section 3.11 Business Master Plan District to the Norwich zoning regulations.
I declare this public hearing to be open at this time, and I am going to refer back to our city clerk, as she has several correspondence that must be read into the public record before the actual public hearing begins.
This is from Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Dear Commissioners, thank you for notifying this office of the proposed zoning text amendments as noted above. Acting as Commissioner's staff, our office reviewed the amendment for consistency with the policy and standards of the Connecticut Coastal Management Act, and we find the proposed amendments to be consistent with the CCMA. Please be advised that this consistency determination is based on coastal management considerations only and does not necessarily reflect other municipal planning and zoning considerations which may apply. These comments are made in response to the review requirements contained in Section 22 small a 104 parentheses E of the Connecticut General Statutes, which requires notification be sent to the Commissioner of Energy and Environmental Protection at least 35 days prior to the commencement of the public hearing. Once notified, our office is responsible for reviewing the proposals' consistency with the policies of Section 22 small a 92 and the criteria of Section 22 small a 105 parentheses B of the CCMA. Should you have any questions regarding this letter, please feel free to contact me, Karen Michaels. Environmental Analysis, Wetlands and Water Resource Division. This letter is from Southeastern Council of Government. Dear Mayor Nystrom, I am writing in response to an application to amend the zoning regulations of the City of Norwich. The application was referred to this agency in correspondence dated February 10th pursuant to Section 8-3 small b of the Connecticut General Statutes. The proposed zoning text amendment seeks to create a new floating zone, the Business Master Plan District. The intent of the BMPD is to allow the planned development of large commercial and industrial sites. Based on a review of the material submitted and considering the fact that the BMPD floating zone is not yet proposed in a discrete location, I do not believe the proposed regulation amendments will have a negative inter-municipal impact. If you have any questions, please contact me, Samuel Alexander, Planner 3, CCOG. Number 3, from the Commission on City Plan. Dear Honorable Mayor and alderpersons of the Council of the City of Norwich, regarding referral from the City Council, an ordinance amending Chapter 3 Special Districts by adding Section 3.11 Business Master Plan District to the BMPD of the Norwich zoning regulations. The Commission on the City Plan at its March 16, 2021 regular meeting reviewed the above reference referral. Seated were Les King, Kathy Wazika, and Jason Couture. After careful consideration, the commission voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation to the council pursuant to Chapter 15, Section 4 of the city charter with the following stated changes. 3.11.2.3, district expiration. That the section be revisited to include additional language requiring completion of at least one approved site plan to ensure that the master plan zone is developed and not just held in perpetuity. 3.11.5.1 I. Minimum district size, that the minimum be changed to 100 acres. 3.11.5.1, 4, 5, and 6. That these items be combined as 4 and changed to minimum front, side, and rear yards, such yards as approved by the master plan. 3.11.5.17, that this item be remunerated as number 5. 3.11.5.2, architectural design, that the second sentence be added. The commission on the city plan shall approve architectural during the site plan process. 3.11.5.4, parking, that the beginning of the second sentence be modified as follows. The master plan shall establish parking where it adheres to industry standards as determined acceptable to the zoning commission with 3.11.5.6, permitted use, that the second sentence be added. This is a non-inclusive list and may include other uses as determined appropriate by the zoning commission at the time the application submission. 3.11.5.6.6, laboratories, that the text, no on-site patient visits permitted, be removed. 3.11.5.7.6, prohibited uses, that retail sales except associated with permitted use truck stops be removed, and that the subsequent prohibited use be remunerated. Thank you. 3, 7, and 8. 3.11.5.8, buffers, that the comma in the second sentence after the word enhanced be removed. That the new section be added for consult review stating, in the event that the zoning commission needs to hire a consultant to review any aspect of the master plan proposal, the applicant shall pay the city's consultant expense. The reason or the favorable recommendations as follows. The addition of the master business plan district of the city of Norwich zoning regulations will enhance the general welfare of the city of Norwich, as stated in the POCD under support economic development. Economic development is important to the overall development and economic health of the city and its residents. This includes retaining and supporting the businesses in Norwich today and attracting new business developments in the future. It also includes land use and activities which provide meaningful employment and which will provide more municipal revenue than required in municipal services. Furthermore, the ordinance with the recommended changes will allow the master plan to be flexible while allowing the zoning commission and the commission on city plan to protect the quality and character of our community while promoting economic development. Respectfully submitted, Les King, Vice Chairman. Number 4, from the Planning and Zoning Commission of Lisbon, regarding the proposed zoning text amendment of the zoning regulation ordinance, proposed amendment, zoning regulation, chapter 3, to add section 311 Business Master Plan District. Dear Ms. Rhodes, I am writing to your referral regarding the application for the City of Norwich text amendments to zone regulation ordinance proposed to amend zoning regulation chapter 3 to add Section 311 Master Plan District. Please be advised that the Lisbon Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed your letter and accompanying material at the March 16, 2021 meeting, special virtual meeting. Based on our review, the information submitted to the Lisbon Planning and Zoning Commission has determined your application will have no intermunicipal impact on the town of Lisbon. If you have any questions, please contact Michael Murphy, AICP, Lisbon Town Planner. Sincerely, Robert Adams, Chairman of the Lisbon Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. The first person signed up to speak at this public hearing tonight is Mr. Chuck Evans. Again, please state your name and address for the public record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
Keep the mask up.
Please.
Charles Evans, 49 Butternut Drive, Norwich, Connecticut. I'm here to speak in opposition to the Business Master Plan District. The potential purchase of the land by the city of Norwich for a second industrial park should not even be considered. This is yet another deal that will compromise the taxpayers of Norwich. The purchase price of the property is $3.55 million for 400 acres. That's almost $9,000 an acre, but only 320 acres are usable for development. The rest is wetlands and unusable. This brings the price per acre to an unheard of price of $11,093 an acre for raw land. Are there any other potential buyers for this property? And if not, then why is the city of Norwich the only willing purchaser of this property at this price? Because this property has been for sale for years. That fact alone raises concerns of judgment and the fundamentals of the deal. The taxpayers of Norwich already bear a heavy tax burden for the services they receive. This town council does not need to risk further financial liability to them through another speculative deal. Why has avoidable short-term lease of said property not even been proposed instead of purchase? Norwich Industrial Park in Norwich Town has available space and is currently underutilized. Dodge Stadium can't really be considered a pillar of economic activity at this time. Lightlear is vacant and has been for years. This one building containing hundreds of thousands of square feet for production and manufacturing, not being used, has 6 tractor-trailer loading docks and already has well-maintained access roads to it. There are also other available spaces or lots for development in the Norwich Industrial Park. Have these options even been considered? The buildings directly across the street from Town Hall, and I'm referring to Chestnut Street, have been vacant for years and allowed to deteriorate further. Why not bring these places up to speed and get them occupied and productive? NCDC has a lot of work they can do right here, close to downtown Norwich, which would rapidly and directly improve local business as well. Norwich should not be in the business of acquiring property to add to the already high taxpayer burden. I believe my apprehension of this project is merited when one considers the history of spending and outcomes which always wind up costing Norwich taxpayer more money. Chelsea Gardens, they leased a Hugh Schnipp and his group. They took more than $250,000 of taxpayer monies and 10 acres of forest and gave back nothing. The parking garage in downtown Norwich for $10 million of taxpayers' money, to which this day seldom has more than 1 or 2, 3 cars in it at any time. What about the purchase of a brand new $300,000 fireboat for the City of Norwich Fire Department? A fire department recently evaluated by objective evaluators and found to have more equipment and resources than any other fire department in the nation. And sadly, a marina that can't even provide gas to the boaters. This entire proposal sounds like the taxpayer is being set up, potentially, to finance yet another massive retirement plan for someone at taxpayers' expense. I would therefore request that the City of Norwich officials please attempt to develop the infrastructure of the city first. I only got 2 lines.
Finish it, please.
Which would help current businesses almost immediately before attempting to develop a new deal on the outskirts of Norwich, which is strictly speculative and will saturate the local neighborhood with noise, diesel fumes, and additional traffic if successful. I'm not against development. I'm all for development that makes sense for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mark Perkins?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, alderpersons, ladies and gentlemen. So after a rather quiet decade, the Byron Brook property, that is the luxury golf resort that finally died on its own.
Excuse me?
Sir.
Mark, could you lift the mic and stand a little difficult to hear?
Okay.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Mark Perkins, 81 Lawler Lane. After a rather quiet decade, the Byron Brook property, that is the luxury golf resort that luckily died on its own, is back on the agenda. So to refresh memories, the property parcels were skillfully acquired with the help of a former city planner and the NCDC. The original proposal was a luxury golf resort with a clubhouse and amenities, and once the zoning and permits were completed, the luxury was removed, and the proposal became housing only with a 3-hole course, and the entire project eventually petered out on its own. But tonight, before the council is ordinance to establish the Business Master Plan District, or the BMPD, as governed by the master plan, and the wording in the ordinance supplies factors that they'd like you, the council, to consider. So if we read down in the section 3.11.5.6, we find allowed uses of manufacturing, truck stops, and power generation facilities and laboratories. So that sounds like smokestacks and truck traffic to me. So my ask of the council is this: before you cast a yes vote on this, is to really study the area and scope, look at it on a map or drive up there in person. There's about a 60-acre parcel sandbank that borders Route 97 in Ockham, Bromley Road, and Canterbury Turnpike. That parcel is probably perfect for commercial and maybe industrial development. And that's probably where our Lisbon Landing should have gone by now. But however, the larger parcels known as the former Terrick Farm are pristine farmland served by Canterbury Turnpike and Lawler Lane. Lawler Lane contains the Moriarty School Zone, and Canterbury Turnpike dumps its traffic into the historic district. Is this really where we want to steer our truck traffic? Because that's probably where a third of it is going to go. And truck stops are on the list. So finally, has the council been presented with a list of detailed plans of any type? Is there a list of tenants ready to move in? Do we know where these highway ramps are really going to go and who's going to pay for them? Since we have vacancies in our current business park, and I doubt any of these questions have been answered for the council, I recommend the council move to postpone your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to speak on the ordinance that it is proposed? Yeah.
Bob Buckley, 18 Linden Parkway, Norwich, Connecticut. I'm chairman of the board of the Norwich Community Development Corporation, and I would like to read our comments on the proposed zoning change. So I'm here this evening to read into the record the comments of the Norwich Community Development Corporation as the applicant of the proposed text amendment to the Norwich zoning regulation establishing the Business Master Plan District, which would be a new floating zone. The ordinance was prepared by Mark Block in his capacity as counsel to the Norwich Community Development Corporation for the amendment of Chapter 3 of the zoning ordinance by adding a Section 3.1 Business Master Plan District. This ordinance began in concept with Jason Vincent in the fall of 2020, and NCDC, in cooperation with the Office of Planning and Neighborhood Services and the support of others, to develop an additional tool for the City of Norwich to move forward with development projects on a larger scale, commensurate with development in other communities in the state of Connecticut. Although stated in our application that in the City of Norwich there exist properties which are proximate to Interstate 395, which represent important opportunities for economic growth and community development, we recognize that there may also be other areas in the city which may be identified from time to time, which also represent similar opportunities. As stated in the narrative which accompanied our application, this zone will afford the city the opportunity to rezone existing properties as part of a comprehensive plan of commercial development consistent with the City of Norwich Plan of Conservation and Development. The Business Master Plan District would require a minimum acreage of land sufficient to retain and support the expansion of existing businesses and to target other desired markets and business sectors. Before there can be any development, the ordinance requires the filing of a master plan approval of the City Council, acting in its capacity as the zoning authority. Requiring the filing and approval of a master plan will ensure consistent, quality, and uniform development. It is our strong belief that the addition of a business master plan district to the City of Norwich zoning regulations will enhance the general welfare of the City of Norwich, further promote economic development section of the city's plan of conservation and development subsection, support economic development. It states the following. Economic development is important to the overall development and economic health of the city and its residents. This includes retaining and supporting the businesses in Norwich today and attracting new business development in the future. It also includes attracting land uses and activities which provide meaningful employment and which provide more municipal revenue than they require municipal services. It is also important to recognize that by creating this business master plan district zone, it does not rezone any particular parcel or parcels of land or authorize the construction of any building or buildings. Anyone filing an application for the establishment of a business master plan district would have to file an application and meet all of the qualifications and standards for approval of their application. That approval would only establish the zone itself. Specifically, Section 3.11.3 says that the purpose of the submission of a master plan is to determine whether the proposed uses.
Please summarize, Bob.
I'm sorry?
If you could please summarize.
Okay. NCDC believes that the passage of this ordinance will be a significant and needed addition to the zoning regulations of the City of Norwich and will provide opportunities for business growth going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please submit your letter so that the full record is part. Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Deanna Rhodes, Director of Planning for the City of Norwich, and I just wanted to go over very quickly with you a couple of items that were in the Commission on the City Plan's comments. Their recommendation was favorable with some specific conditions. And the first one was very general, and I just wanted to let you know that we did work on that, was 311.2.3 district expiration, and that section be revisited to include language, additional language requiring completion of at least one approved site plan to ensure that the master plan zone is developed and not just held in perpetuity. So I do have that language, and I want to read that in. It would be, the district expiration would now say, approval of the zone change under the business master plan district shall be void without any further action of the city council, and the property shall automatically return to its prior zoning designation unless a site plan for one or more sites in the BMPD is approved within 5 years of the zone change approval, comma, this is the new language, and all work in connection with the site plan is completed within a 5-year period. The city council may grant one or more extensions of this period prior to expiration upon written request of the applicant, but in no event will the extensions exceed, this is new language, the extension of any site plan approval to complete the required work, but excluding an extension under section 7.5.10. It being the intention of this provision that should the site work not be completed within site plan extension, that this zone change under the business master plan district be null and void and the property revert to its prior zoning designation. So we've added some language there that would facilitate what the Commission on the City Plan wanted, and I can provide that too. And the other thing that I wanted to clarify in there, that they wanted that new section be added for the consultant review. That would be section 3.11.6 at the end. I am available after the public hearing if you have additional questions specifically about the department's review of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in relation to this ordinance proposed? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Marvin Cerruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, United States of America. I am just curious about our brownfield situation. I know there was an article in the paper a number of months ago on how industry is not having a desire to come here because of our brownfield situation. I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, there's no remedy from the people who created the brownfields. I would imagine you would like to go to some kind of a grant with the government to cure them. But I think there's going to have to come a day when we bite the bullet and clean up the house. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Again, the public hearing is open. If anyone would like to speak, yes, please.
Joanne Philbrick, 10 Elm Avenue. I wish that I could say it was nice to be here, but that would be an untruth, and I am an advocate for transparency. I have had the opportunity, like Mr. Evans, to do what I like to refer to as recon. I took a ride through the business park, the existing business park, the other day. There are many, many empty buildings, many, many for lease signs, numerous nonprofits, a Dodd Stadium whose life expectancy is very, very short. So my question is, who owns the land in the industrial park? I made several phone calls today because actually, unfortunately, the only way that the citizens of Norwich can ever get any information is by reading the newspaper or doing their own due diligence. So today I called NCDC asking to speak to someone about the article I read in the Norwich Times. And my first question was, where does NCDC get $3.55 million to buy a tract of land? And I was told by the young lady, I don't remember her name, it was not Fawn Walker, who is the acting director. I guess we didn't learn our lesson the last time we had somebody from NPU being our substitute director, sarcasm intended. And she informed me that NPU would be purchasing this parcel of land, these how many acres for the $3.55 million. So now I have learned that NPU is purchasing the land, NCDC is going to administer it, and I have yet to be able to determine who actually owns the land in the current industrial park and who will actually own the land in the proposed industrial park. If someone could get back to me, I would appreciate that. And I have to say this in all honesty and all candor, that the majority of my emails to certain members of this council go unanswered. I had a long discussion with Leon, who assured me after due diligence on his behalf that my emails are indeed going to those of you who choose not to respond. So I am not in favor of this. We've had over the decades way too many failed projects. We don't need another one. Thank you.
And the public hearing is still open if anyone would like to speak in relation to this ordinance as proposed. Again, anyone else like to speak on the ordinance as proposed? One more time, does anyone like to speak about this ordinance as it is proposed before us this evening? Seeing that no one else would like to speak on this ordinance, I would then declare this public hearing to be closed. Thank you.
Second reading in action on ordinance previously presented. An ordinance amending Chapter 3 Special District by adding Section 311 Business Master Plan District to the Norwich zoning regulations.
To bring this ordinance to the floor, I would ask for a motion and a second, please. Alderwoman Gould, is there a second? Alderwoman Miles. Is there discussion on the ordinance as proposed? Alderwoman Gould?
I'd just like to ask that we consider making the recommendations from the Commission on the City Plan part of the ordinance amending Chapter 3.
You're proposing a motion to amend in its entirety all of the recommendations that were
Yes.
included in their notification to us.
Correct.
Is there a second? Alderman Nash. Further discussion? Alderman Gould, do you have any further points?
No, thank
Okay.
you.
Alderman DeLucia then, please.
I just wonder if those changes or those requested changes have been vetted by Corporation Counsel and by the council involved in the writing of this ordinance.
It is my understanding that the Corporate Counsel did in fact review them, along with Attorney Mark Block, who assisted in its initial draft. And I don't want to speak for Corporate Counsel, but it's my understanding that there was no disagreement on those recommendations from the CCP, or Commission on the City Plan.
What you have presently is the proposed change that Attorney Block submitted through Deanna Rhodes with respect to some of the recommendations, but as far as the rest of the recommendations, there's no language that's been drafted for any of those. If the council amends the ordinance tonight, it'll have to go out and be republished, and
That's right.
it will come up at the next meeting. But right now, the only proposed change is the one that City Planner Rhodes read into the record for the council. That's the only one that's in written form at this point in time.
Thank you. Alderman DeLucia, you still have the floor.
It appears the Director of
Deanna
Planning
Rhodes,
and
Director of
Neighborhood
Planning.
Services has input.
Stacy asked me to come up. Do you have a question for me?
So my specific question was whether the changes that are being requested by the Commission on the City Plan have been reviewed by council.
Yes, and they were also vetted and looked at by Attorney Mark Block, who they have, on behalf of NCDC, and are comfortable with all the changes, including the language that I read to you earlier. Attorney Block it proposed that language, and I read it over, and I was in agreement with that language. So he's comfortable with all the changes that were recommended by the Commission on the City Plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further? Yes, President Pro Tem Mark Bettencourt, please.
I think, just a question for council. If we don't accept all the changes in the report by the Commission on the City Plan, would that then require a supermajority of the council to pass it?
I think so.
Yes.
The charter is silent on that. I think you would probably adopt it by a simple majority of the council.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't quite hear you there.
The charter is silent on the question of whether or not there's a supermajority required if you don't get a recommendation from the Commission on the City Plan. Since you zone under the charter, I think a simple majority is adequate to pass it. It's an issue that I don't know if it's been resolved by litigation or whatever. If you were to do it under the statutes, then it would require a 2/3 majority.
Okay. All right, well, on the motion then, on the motion for the changes, I got some questions about the genesis of how some of these came about. So how is it, what was the rationale for reducing I'm not a huge fan of overlay zones to begin with, just so you understand where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But I get the use. So in this case, the reduction of acreage to 100. What was the rationale for that? Were you involved in the input on that, or?
Sure. No, as a matter of fact, I was not. So the only comment that I really had was the comment that I read. I wanted to make sure we protected the city and not have floating zones approved and not be developed. So I was very insistent on that we have that null and void type of period in our council, and the council for the applicant, NCDC, agreed with that. As far as the acreage change, let me just get to my notes here. That came out from the commission themselves, and the discussion was really about feeling that since this is a master plan zone that can happen anywhere in the city, they felt that it would give more options for other places in the city for this to happen, and that they felt there may be appropriate lands elsewhere that are maybe smaller too. So they went back and forth about what that number might be for acreage, and they did throw out several different ones, lower than even 100 acres, and they decided on 100 acres. But they thought that setting it at 200 would make it very exclusive to very few parcels, when 100 might be more reasonable for other locations to happen in the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll stay up here if you want for other questions.
It might not be a bad idea. I had some, I took some issues regarding some of the changes in the language. Now, part of this is that the zone was restrictive, I think, when it was first proposed on purpose. So in opening it up, so we talk about in the prohibited uses, you know, in opening it up to other things, and then making the change. Start looking for the language here. The non-inclusive list.
Yeah.
You know, so I have some real concerns with that. So I don't. I think when we start talking about this, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, it was tailored for one specific property, really. When you have to start thinking about it, at least initially. But this, you know, it certainly could have some advantages doing this. But if someone would want to change and stuff, as far as what could be added, I think, you know, we could consider that by ordinance on an individual basis in the text amendment, and I wouldn't really want to open it up. I think that's too broad a language to put in, because then I think we'd be fighting, you know, to maintain.
So the reason that came up, thank you for your comments, and I appreciate that. I feel similar to you on that. That came up from one of the commission members that thought that in the future, other uses might come about that we haven't thought about yet, and that it would be easy for the, you know, for the council as the zoning authority to have that opportunity to consider those if there's some unusual use that we've never thought of before. However, I agree with you, Alderman Betancourt, that it's so broad that a lot of things could come up, and then it puts the council in a could be in a precarious situation to have to consider that in the midst of a master plan, you know, project being considered for a zone change in front of you. So I could sort of go both ways on it from a planning perspective. I think it gives you some tools, some flexibility to consider other uses that may not have been thought about at this time. However, I do feel that there's a process in place that if somebody has an idea for a different use that they want to consider, they can also come forward with a text amendment to this section and add another use in that table. So, you know, there is a way to do it. So, I mean, there's a route. But I also agree that it is very broad, and it puts a lot of questions about what, you know, you're going to have to deal with if you had an application in front of you of a use that's not in this table. So that was mentioned by one of the commission members and was discussed quite a bit, and then was added into that motion, and it did pass unanimously. But I see your point on that.
Okay, and the next one regarding the laboratories, I think, you know, in the creation of this ordinance, I mean, there was specific discussion about that, the first draft anyway, and that we didn't want the, you know, that kind of traffic there. You know,
Yeah,
so.
I think that they were thinking about, you know, like something example like a Concerta that used to be in the business park, where people actually went there, and it wasn't just lab work. It was sort of like you went and had, you know, medical examinations kind of done there. So that was thinking, well, why would it be a problem if you had a laboratory that someone went up and did, you know, like we were doing COVID testing or that kind of thing? Why would it be an issue that they could go there? So that was just taken out. Again, that was just maybe adding some flexibility that laboratories could have patient visitors there.
You have a personal opinion on that?
On that one, I actually don't. No, I could go, because we did have something in the business park similar to that with the Concerta, you know, what was it called, Concerta?
Concentra.
Concentra, thank you very much. I apologize, Concentra. And it worked, I think, fairly well there, and then they moved on to a more visible location on Route 82. So, no, that one could go either way. Let me see what else there. Is there anything else that?
No. I'm kind of I think I'm going to ask the council's indulgence here. I would ask whether you would prefer to divide the question, or, which would be voting on each one of these individually, or these potential changes, or whether you would just want to take, and allow me to maybe amend one or two. Take a shot at it anyway. Mayor?
The floor is yours.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to motion to amend and remove the 3.11.5.6 permitted uses section of the proposed change. This is a non-inclusive list. And to be honest with you, I think that's the only one that really bothers me to any great extent. So, I mean, I'm not crazy about the 100 acre, but I think if we do keep the 100 acre, then it would give us some opportunities down the road to consider other projects, and I'm not against that, obviously. So my motion would be to amend Alderwoman Gould's amendment and remove 3.11.5-6.
Thank you. Is there a second?
No, I have a question.
No,
Okay.
there's a motion on the floor. In order for it to continue further, must have a second. Is there a second? It is seconded by Alderwoman Miles. The motion before us now is to strike that recommendation from the CCP 3.11.5.6 permitted uses from the amendment as offered by Alderwoman Gould. Is there further discussion? Alderman Nash.
My question is, on 6 there, it says laboratories, no outside patient visits permitted. So there wouldn't be testing for COVID. I think of laboratories like testing of medicines, creating of medicines.
He's not.
What, am I wrong?
Yeah, no, we're not talking about that one.
I thought you said laboratories, 6.
No, I
No, it's
talked about
permitted
that
uses, the one just
So
before
you want
that.
to scratch that whole?
Yeah, just that one section, 3.11.
On page 2, the top paragraph.
Just the amendment to section 311.56,
Oh, okay.
which is that
All right.
added section.
I thought you, when you
that
said
added
6, I
sentence
thought
that
you were
wanted.
talking about the laboratories. It was confusing. Thank you for your explanation.
You're welcome. Again, the motion is to strike that particular recommendation from the CCP. Is there further discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
It's a question, can you give us the section again, please?
It's on the top of page 2 of the CCP report. So it's 3.11.5.6, permitted uses. That a second sentence be added. This is a non-inclusive list and may include other uses as deemed appropriate by the zoning commission at the time of the application submission. I would want to strike that as being overly broad.
Alderman DeLucia, you still have the floor.
So my question would be, if that section, question for you, Deanna, is that section is struck, and I know this is kind of putting you on the spot, but does that have a fundamental impact that would make this
No, not at all, because
challenging.
the applicant had specific uses that they proposed and specific prohibited uses in their regulation. And this was just the commission on the city plan looking at being more flexible for the council and their zoning authority to consider other uses. They were not asking for any additional, the NCDC in their application did not ask for anything additional besides what's in their permitted uses and then was listed in their prohibited uses. So it was really even going beyond what the request was of the applicant. Is that fair? Did you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman DeLucia. Alderman Wilson, please.
So I would say I agree with you on this one, Alderman Bettencourt, about striking the language. I think we have a process in place for someone to come forward, and it would be a rigorous and vetting situation anyway, so why circumvent that for a specific situation? So I think we keep what we have in place, and it's not necessary, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Briefly, I would join in favor of striking this section myself. I discussed this with our planner this afternoon. Just remind everyone that the Zoning Commission is in fact the council itself, and this would open the door for a protracted series of issues. And the whole point of the overlay district is to protect the city further than what the current designation is, which is simply planned development. So there's no further discussion, yes,
I just want to add a comment from something that someone said at the public hearing. You know, this is the last tract of land that the city could get their hands on. And if we don't get our hands on it and control what happens there, this beautiful piece of land could end up being a salvage yard. And 20 years from now, when they leave the salvage yard and they gift that filthy piece of property to the city of Norwich, it will now be our problem to clean up. If the city, in some way, shape, or form, can control what goes on these pieces of land in this master plan, we have a better chance of not creating brownfields for the next generation or the generation afterward to have to clean up. Or we have to look at some unsightly something that goes there. And as you come into the city of Norwich on 395, look at X that looks horrible. So that's why we need to sort of take this under our wing if we could put it together. And I'm specifically speaking about the land on Lawler Lane and the Ockham section. We don't need a filthy mess that you come into Norwich, the Rose of New England, and see some unsightly something going on there. And that's why we'll support this ordinance this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the amendment to strike this section? Seeing none.
Did Bill have his hand up?
Alderman Nash, were you raising your hand?
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The motion is to strike this section. All those in favor? It's unanimous. 7-0, this section is removed. On the motion to adopt the remaining recommendations from the CCP, is there further discussion? Alderman Nash.
I'd just like to echo some of Alderwoman Gould's comments. I've been sitting up here for a little while, and I thank God it's almost done. But I will say this, for years, we get criticized constantly, the council or councilmen, councilwomen that have sat here, about having our heads up our butts and not knowing what's going on, and we're out of touch with everything going on in the city. We don't know what's going on. We're stupid. Well, this is an opportunity for us to put a plan in place. I want to say it's like putting the horse before the cart, and we're constantly getting criticized by putting the cart in front of the horse. Well, here's the chance that we have to put a horse in front of the cart so that we can control what goes up there. We do know what's happening, and we can control what's there. Like Alderwoman Gould said, if we don't control this property, if we don't put things in place, we could get a tire burning plant. We could get a garbage burning plant. We could get a junkyard, okay? And like everyone knows in this city, we have plenty of brownfields as it is. And this is a way for us to control what happens right by Moriarty School. This does give us control of what happens off the highways. So, you know, I know there's been mistakes made in the past, and there'll be mistakes made in the future by councils that sit up here, but you can't criticize us for putting the dang horse in front of the cart. So I'll be supporting this, and I'll encourage my fellow council persons to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the amendment offered? Yes, Alderman Wilson.
You know, so I think one of the things when we look at this, you know, it gives us a specific playbook on how to move forward. There are checks and balances in place that allow this to work. So, you know, again, it's one of those things where this isn't something we just sprung on. It's been worked on to get to this point. So that's why I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment recommending the remaining adoptions of the Commission on a City Plan be added to this ordinance? That is unanimous. Vote is 7-0. What is now before us is the ordinance as amended. Is there further discussion? Yes, Alderman Betancourt.
Yeah, so I think some people misunderstood what this ordinance is about, basically, and that this is not going to authorize, and our planning director, she spoke on this earlier, that this is not going to authorize any construction or any one project or anyone putting a shovel in the ground or anything. I mean, obviously, there are plans being worked on for that particular site, for Business Park North, as it's referred to. And I'm supportive of the concept at this point. The issue is that really that's the last piece of developable property. But we are not in town that's clean. The problem is we're not talking about that right now. So we're talking about a text amendment change. You know, none of that has any bearing on what we're talking about, especially now, you know, by incorporating the changes, I think, from the CCP, which we're not going to, from my council, we're not going to be able to vote on this tonight, correct?
Not
By
final vote.
incorporating those changes?
That's
It's going to have to
correct.
be reposted? Right, so
Yes.
they'll be reposted. So, but with that said, I just want to make it clear to people that anything that happens down the road that might be subject to this ordinance would have to come back before this council for, and, you know, for a development plan in that form. And so that's, you know, that's a ways down the road. But it's also, it's going to be its own separate process, really. And that's what's kind of different with this ordinance, I think, because it puts, I think, more control here in the elected officials, you know, that are more answerable to the community, I would think. And allows, so it helps with development and that it, you know, creates this kind of zone as an opportunity, but also leaves the control here in Chambers. So as with the city council being the zoning authority. So don't everybody, or not everybody, but some people, you know, it's way too early to panic about anything. You know, this is just another tool in the toolbox, as we like to say sometimes. And I think for when we start talking about economic development and those kind of issues, it's very important that we have as much flexibility as reasonably possible to achieve any kind of goal. Because what is zoning by its nature is permissive. It has to be written as far as what's allowed. And if it's not in there, then they can't do it. So that's why a zoning change like this is advantageous, I think, for the city. I'm in favor of this particular concept, especially with the requirements that are in here now, that there'll be some control, that there'll be public hearings, that there'll be people coming before the city council itself, and we'll be able to address those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Question to our city clerk. What is sufficient time in order for these amendments now to be codified in resolution and be part of the body for you to then advertise that? Do you need more than 2 weeks, which is our next council meeting, or would it be best to go to the first meeting in May in order for you to comply with the publications?
Yeah, I can do them within this, I can do it for the 19th, April 19th.
You can.
meeting.
Thank you.
I'll get it in the paper tomorrow, not tomorrow, the next day, Wednesday. I should be able to get them in.
Thank you. Then I would ask a motion to postpone the final vote on this ordinance as amended until the 19th of April. Is there such a motion? Alderman Wilson, second. Alderwoman Gould.
I'm not motioning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Debate is still welcome. Go right ahead.
No, actually, it was on the date of the 19th. Unless it's a dire, we need to get this passed, I have no issue going into May to give individuals the time to answer any additional questions. I understand it's going to be posted in its 2 weeks. I don't have a problem. I would suggest out of giving individuals time to come back with everything also going on with the budget and other things, if people have some additional time, I don't see what the issue would be with that, but that is up for debate.
Thank you. Corporate Counsel?
One of the things that the council has to do at the first meeting in May is to adopt the tentative budget. So I don't know how much work you're pushing upon yourself for that meeting, if that's when you want to push it to.
Thank you. The question is to the members of council. you would prefer the second meeting in April or the first meeting in May. Pro tem, please.
If we can get it posted and everything, I think we can do it this next meeting. So it's enough time for, if there's any other questions that arise between now and then, and if we can't get them answered, then we can always postpone at that point. So,
That works
sound
for
good?
That works for me.
All right.
Who would be the maker of the motion, please?
I'll make a motion to reschedule the vote for this ordinance after posting for the second meeting in April.
So the motion before us is to postpone the vote on the ordinance as amended until April 19th, made by Pro Tem Bettencourt, second by Alderwoman Gould. Is there further discussion? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
Well, I would just ask the Director of Planning and Neighborhood Services if that presents an issue for any timelines that we have in the hopper, so to speak.
It doesn't present any timeline issues for our department, and I can work and provide information specifically to the clerk as far as what the language is and things like that. But did NCDC, as the applicant, do you have an issue with either of those dates?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All those in favor of the motion before us to postpone the ordinance as amended till the 19th? That motion is unanimous. It passes 7-0. Thank you for your indulgence.
Petition and communication. Number 1. Report from Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection regarding proposed text amendment to Chapter 3, proposed addition of Section 3.11 Master Business Plan.
Motion, please, to receive. Alderwoman Gould, second by Alderman Wilson. All those in favor, receive this petition. It is unanimous. Vote is 7-0.
Number 2, report from Southeastern Council of Governments regarding proposed text amendment to Chapter 3, proposed addition of Section 3.11, Master Business Plan District.
Again, a motion forward to receive. Alderwoman Gould, second Alderwoman Miles. No discussion. All those in favor? It is unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Number 3, report from the Commission on City Plan of the City of Norwich pursuant to Section 8-24 of the Connecticut General Statutes and Section 15, Section 4 of the Norwich City Charter regarding the proposed text amendments of Chapter 3, proposed addition to Section 3.11 Master Business Plan District.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderwoman Miles, second. Alderman Wilson. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? It is unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Thank you. Number 4, report from the Town of Lisbon regarding proposed text amendment to Chapter 3, proposed addition of Section 3.11 Business Master Plan District.
Again, a motion to receive. Alderman Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Number 5, letter of resignation of Judith Post from the Youth Advisory Board.
Alderman Wilson makes the motion to receive, second Alderwoman Gould. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? It's unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
Number 6, report from the Public Safety Committee regarding the resolution to authorize and direct the city manager to prepare preliminary estimates of the potential cost of equipment and software improvements suitable for upgrades to the dispatch system.
A motion, please, to receive it. Alderwoman Miles, second Alderman DeLucia. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. The vote is 7-0.
City manager's proposed budget fiscal year 21-22.
Thank you. Tonight, I am going to summarize the proposed city manager's budget for fiscal year 21-22. We start with the priorities. I think we've met the priorities for this year. One is to try to minimize the impact on taxpayers while maintaining minimizing of reduction to services, collaboration and sharing of resources among departments, maintain the city's infrastructure, and then finally provide for an increase in education funding. So I think those 4 priorities have been met. First section, I'm going to talk about revenue factors. Particularly, let's talk about state grants. The first item is distressed municipalities grant. This grant was included in the governor's budget and includes a one-time $3.5 million distressed municipalities grant. This is used in the general fund to defray some of our costs. And when we talk about the capital budget, you'll see how that gets utilized partially there. And the other part is to compensate for some of the revenue losses, particularly in NPU revenue to the city. The second is the Alliance District funding. The state has maintained the Alliance District grant to Norwich Public Schools at the $6.9 million level in 2021. This source is important to note, is not included in the general fund. Norwich Public Schools must submit a plan to the State Department of Education for their approval on how the district intends to use the Alliance District grant. And then we have other formula grants. The non-Alliance education cost sharing and other state formula grants are unchanged at this point. Of course, we're not complete with the legislative process, so they could change, but our projections are that they remain the same from last fiscal year. I will note that there are some proposals out there to increase the payment in lieu of taxes, or what we call the pilot funding for Norwich and other towns, which may affect future budgets. Again, that is under discussion at the legislature, and we'll need a source of funding, which is under discussion now by the legislature. So we have not included any pilot changes in our proposed budget. Now let's talk a little bit about federal grants. The major one is the Federal American Rescue Plan. At the present time, we are seeking more clarifications for usage of the American Rescue Plan funds. At this point, the funds are broken down into 2 areas. One is approximately $21.4 million for local government operations, although they appear to be restricted to certain items and functions. The federal government has 60 days to get these regulations in place. It's the Treasury Department of the federal government that is doing this. 60 days is from the point of passage of the legislation, which is March 11th. So no later than May 11th, the city should have clarification on how these funds can be used. I will note that the funds are subdivided into 2 fiscal years, so you divide the 21.4 by 2 to see what you get in this fiscal year. So it's about half. In addition, there is money that would have been allocated to the counties of the state of Connecticut if the state of Connecticut had active counties. Since we don't, we still have that allocation from the federal government, and that is going to be divided on a per capita basis in the county. So the city might be receiving an additional $5 million or so, depending on the final numbers on that. So these are not included in the proposed budget at this point. And when we have a more clear indication of how the funds could be used, we'll bring them back to the city council for further discussion. In addition, the Norwich Public Schools is eligible for $17.2 million for education, and it has some restrictions, but the eligible uses appear to be broader than the local government funds. I might add that the city's funds come directly from federal government, whereas the education funds come via the state system, so we have a little more direct funding on that. Next is how our grand list did this year. We were pleased to announce that the grand list grew approximately 1.3% as of the collectible grand list for 21-22, just over $2 billion in value. The major area of increase was the motor vehicle values, which increased 0.56%. That was the major area of increase. There was increase in real estate, 0.3%, and personal property, 0.33%. But the major driver was motor vehicles. I've made some conjecture of why I think that occurred. It is possible that individuals that retained their jobs had excess money because they weren't traveling, they weren't going to restaurants, they weren't doing items like that, so they might have had excess funds to purchase a car. I can't think of any other reason at this point why it accelerated like that. And frankly, I was surprised. But it is a good revenue item for us. So it went up, and actually went up more than the previous year. Other revenues, we continue with the 10% share of NPU revenues. That revenue item will decrease by about $521,000 to about $8.6 million for fiscal 21-22. It must be known that the revenue item is from the previous year's revenue for NPU, so we're always a year behind. So we do project that next year will be a larger decrease. Hopefully, some of the American Recovery Funds can be used to subsidize some of these losses. We are allocating $3.3 million allocated to the CCD, same as this fiscal year. We are projecting a further decline in interest income. It was only a few years ago that we were projecting about $1 million in interest income. Now we're about 1/4 of that. So there's good and bad news with that. The good news is when we do borrow for long-term borrowing, we get good rates. The bad news is that our interest investments are very low. And so we're recovering. That's about a $750,000 difference between the peak and the year we're in now. The good news is, though, we have increased our revenue projections for conveyance taxes, building permits, and many other revenue as the country emerges from the pandemic. As you might have observed, we've had a housing, I wouldn't say boom, but we've had a activity in the housing market that's reflected in the conveyance taxes. Prices have gone up positively. At the same time, there has been an increase in building permits taken out, both commercial and residential. So those offset some of the items that have gone down. Let's talk briefly about some of the expenditure categories. The first is salaries and fringe. The 2021 budget included decreases in wages by budgeting several position vacancies for some of all of the fiscal year. We did that to reduce the impact on the budget for last fiscal year. So the budget for 21-22 starts off with these positions being filled for the entire year, which increases the budget about $240,000. I will note that I have placed in the budget the new position I'm titling the Fire Services Coordinator. In the study, it was called a Fire Commissioner. I think that this describes it a little better. Certainly, I'm open to other suggestions. This, again, is a position that was recommended by the McGrath Fire Service Study. My proposed budget assumes that this position is filled in the fall. I think that it's a complex position. It'll take some time to fill it. Base wages increased due to scheduled wage increases from bargaining unit contracts. The only outstanding contract that the city has now is the fire department firefighters contract. That is presently under negotiation. All other contracts have been settled, and we know what the increases would be for the following years. There's a disappointing glitch in our budgeted insurance costs. The Athens estimate for increases is about 10%, which is much higher than we've had previously. Now, it's not based on use of services because, as you know, we're self-funded. We do not pay premiums to Anthem. But their projection is that there's a pent-up demand for medical services that were not done during the pandemic year last year, and that will catch up to the city in next fiscal year. That's a projection. We don't know if that will happen. Certainly, individuals did put off optional medical services in that sense. So we'll see that, if that's the case. Finally, we had pension and OPEB cost increase by about $550,000. Other expenditures. We had debt service decreased by about $190,000. We haven't issued new debt recently, and so our debt continues to be paid off at a rapid rate. Fuel and utilities, we're showing the inflation that you probably have seen at the gas pump. We've increased fuel and utilities by about $164,000. And finally, a major line item is that we've increased the capital budget by about $1 million, $988,000. We've set this aside as a payment to help fund the proposed communication system that the fire study has proposed. So, and that funding comes from the funds from the federal government. So it's a one-time situation that if we get it in the funding, that's good, and then it goes away next year, that's fine. because it's a one-time capital expenditure. Now, strategies for developing the budget. Of course, we looked at economic development and other initiatives. We looked at the impact on taxpayers to explain, because of the end result, after all the other decisions before it, we needed to take a look at that. And maintaining the infrastructure, an increase in education funding, they all were important items. Some other economic development initiatives in the budget, in the mayor and council budget, is an increase to an NCDC contribution by $50,000 to $200,000. The board has requested an increase in this to reflect some of the administrative costs that are reflected in the continual operation of the NCDC administration. Again, that is something the council should look at closely. We do have $25,000 in there for multicultural development program, which existed prior, and then an additional $25,000 for marketing and branding activities. That continues our progress on that. Finally, other initiatives in the McGrath study. We talked a little bit about fire service director position. We talked about dispatch operation upgrades, the software and hardware costs are potentially budgeted for in the capital budget. And finally, there was a recommendation for an exhaust system for Yantic Fire Station, which is included in the capital budget. The city has, I'm up to the capital, right, okay. The city has quite a few capital needs. As I said, I'm proposing about $3.6 million of capital improvements, including about $1 million for the capital contingency. The majority would be used to addressing the recommended dispatch and communication improvements that were detailed in the McGrath study. So the remainder is about the number that we normally request the city council to review. The capital budget includes the normal paving projects, firefighter equipment, and repairs to city buildings and other facilities. I will note that the capital requests from departments totaled about $46 million, so the 3.6 is quite a reduction from the request. I have proposed an increase in education funding. The proposed increase is 2.5% or $2.1 million. The requested budget by the Norwich Board of Education is 3.95% or 3.3%, so this doesn't get to the 3.95, but I think makes a good attempt to fund it strongly. And obviously, it'll be up to the council to determine what the final number would be on this. As you can see on the chart, the city has consistently funded the Board of Education at a higher level than it funds other city departments. The Board of Ed is the top number, and the city is the orange line below it. Now, finally, here we go. What is the impact on the taxpayer? The mill rate increase would be about 1.5%. That includes the funding for the schools. The last 3 years, I propose funding about 2% increase to the Board of Ed, so this is a 0.5% more. That difference is where the tax increase comes in at about 1.5%. The CCD and Town Consolidated District have increases based on the adopted budget and the change. They look large, but the budget are small, and relatively speaking, they're pretty consistent with previous years. So the total combined increases with the Consolidated District and the Town Consolidation District is about 2%. So in summary, appropriations for the city in total, including Norwich Public Utilities, is $244,545,000. Of that, $97.1 million is Norwich Public Utilities, 86.3 is education, 3.6 is capital improvements, and then general operations and debt service are about 48.7. The major increase is obviously the capital improvements, which is 37%, and that is because we added the $987,000 for the dispatch system in that. Okay. The famous Tudor house that we use each year. This graph does break down the impact of taxes on a median single-family home in the city consolidated district. And they're too small for me to read. I'm going to ask if Josh has better eyesight than me, just to denote what they are. I don't think it's in my notes, is it? I have the wrong one.
So if you can see the laser pointer, this sliver here represents capital improvements. This sliver here is fire protection. From this bar over to this bar is education. And this narrow area here is public works, general government, debt service, and then police.
So you can see how the sections of the house are prorated out for the budget. Now, this is the first step tonight. We do have budget meetings scheduled for tomorrow, April 6th, where we'll be concentrating on public safety. Then on Monday, April 12th, we'll have Human Services, Public Works, Planning, and Public Utilities. Tuesday, the 13th, will be Otis Library and the Public Schools. Thursday, the 15th, will be City Clerk, City Managers, Human Resources, the Mayor's Budget, Finance, and then the first budget public hearing. Hopefully, April 19th, we have our regular council meeting. We don't consider the budget that night. On May 3rd, the council meeting, it's proposed that the council consider adoption of the council preliminary budget. On May 10th, we would have the second public hearing. May 17th would be a regular council meeting. And then Monday, June 7th, the council meeting would be the tentative date for budget adoption. So that concludes my overview tonight. We'll be meeting 5 more times on various budget items. We will be doing it in person, continuing what we're doing tonight, so department heads and other personnel will be here to answer questions directly to the city council. That concludes my brief presentation for tonight.
Thank you, John.
One request.
Yes.
If we could get the slides, John. If you could just send us your slides. You can email them. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Please.
Old business resolutions. Relative to obtaining potential preliminary estimates to upgrade the dispatch system.
Thank you. I'd ask for a motion to bring this forward. President Pro Tem Mark Bettencourt, second Alderman Nash. Is there discussion? Alderman DeLucia.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the resolution according to the recommendation of the unanimous recommendation of the Public Safety Committee at its March meeting. If you look at petition and communication item number 6, in bold on the bottom is the recommended text for the last paragraph of the resolution.
Is there a second? Alderman Nash. Further discussion? The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. So I'd just like to point out that at the Public Safety Committee meeting that took this item up, this referral up, this text was the result of that meeting, and the only amendment to the original text was to state that the goal is for this item or this project to be on be at referendum on the November ballot, and also to set a deadline of the second meeting in July, because that item was blank in the original text.
Thank you, sir.
Which will be July 19th, 2021.
Yes. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Yes, Alderman Wilson.
I want to thank the Public Safety Committee for considering the resolution and really nailing down a deadline and a goal to help us move this process forward. I think one of the things that this does is shows the severity and seriousness that we are taking some of these recommendations that came from the report. So having that deadline allows us an opportunity to really review it, for them to do the due diligence before coming back to us, but most importantly, gives us a true timeline and time period to get this out for a referendum and giving people the opportunity to really have the information. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? The amendment passes unanimously, 7-0. The resolution as amended, is there further discussion? Seeing none? Yes, I'm sorry. You have a
no,
question?
sorry. No.
Okay. No further discussion? We have a roll call on this, just for clarity's sake.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Number 2, old business, relative to merge 2325 Lake Street with the Lake Street Playground property.
Alderwoman Miles, second. Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion this resolution? Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
This was an item that came before Public Works. Again, and I believe I may have said this either at that committee meeting or on the floor of this council, but to say it again, this is a small piece of property that best serves the city by being joined with the playground and given essentially to the rec department to help that facility better serve the young people and the people that live in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Alderman Wilson.
I'll echo that sentiment. I think one of the things we talk about is beautifying, enhancing, and providing extended opportunities in neighborhoods, and this piece of property allows that playground area to expand in the future with creative ideas, and allows for an opportunity for different things to be done. So that is one of the reasons I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Being none, call the roll, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Citizen comment on resolutions.
Excuse me, just prior to that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I'd ask for a motion to suspend rules for the potential of adding a sixth resolution to this amendment, to the agenda, please. President Pro Tem, is there a second? Alderwoman Gould. I know.
Okay.
She's going to read the motion so people understand what it is.
Resolution reallocating amounts among downtown revitalization program purposes. Section 1, the City Council hereby finds and determines, based upon the utilization of program assets, that the purpose of the downtown revitalization program, including to advance economic development, the remediation of blight, the retention and development of commercial business and activity, providing employment opportunities, the improvement of living conditions, all within downtown revitalization area, will best be served upon reallocation of program assets as follows. So the code correction assistant program will be reduced by $30,000, and the commercial commercial rental subsidy program will be increased by $30,000. Section 2, it is hereby found and determined that as a result of the foregoing reallocation and all prior reallocations, the amount allocated, expended, or encumbered for each individual revitalization program purpose is not less than 30% of the original amount as adopted by referendum held on November 2nd, 2010, at which the $3,380,000 of the City of Norwich Downtown Revitalization Initiative Bond Ordinance was approved. Section 3, now therefore be resolved that the allocation for each individual revitalization program shall be set forth in the column entitled Amended Reallocation Amount in Section 1 of this resolution. Mayor Peter Albert Nystrom, President Pro Tem Mark Bettencourt, and Alderwoman Stacey Gould as sponsors.
Thank you. The motion before us to suspend our rules. All those in favor of suspension? That is unanimous. I'd entertain a motion now to add to the agenda, which will be titled Resolution 6, the resolution outlined by our city clerk. Is there such a motion? Alderwoman Gould. Second, Alderman Nash. All those in favor? That is unanimous, 7-0. Again, it is item 6. Thank you all.
Now, citizen
Yes.
comment on resolutions.
Yes, thank you. Anyone wishing to speak on any of the 6 resolutions before us today, please state your name and address. For the record, you will have 3 minutes if you so wish to share your concerns. Yes, please, Mr. Philbrook.
Joanne Philbrook, 10 Elm Avenue. I wish somebody could explain to me, this is in regards to resolution number 4. Could somebody again get back to me on whatever happened to the roundabouts? I never understand how we never resolve one issue and then yet we move on to another. So if somebody could get back to me on the status of the roundabouts. And then number 6, again, if somebody could explain to me the nature of the emergency for this, that it has to be added to an agenda at the very last moment. It's confusing enough for those of us that like to remain informed, to have the agenda posted late morning, early afternoon, on a Thursday of a long weekend, which doesn't give much time for people to do their due diligence. So the 2 questions, number 4, whatever happened to the roundabouts, and number 6, the emergency of reallocating the funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on any of the 6 resolutions? Yes, sir.
Marvin Cerruto, 100 Star Street, Norwich, Connecticut, United States of America. First, a thank you for the proclamations. I'll see to it all of the veterans organizations get a copy that I'm involved with here in town. I'd like to speak to resolution number 5. Just simply, I'm in favor of it. I'm a parishioner at St. Pat's. I get involved as much as I can with St. Vincent de Paul Place. Thank you for that. And on number 6, I'll generalize. You hear about it from me all the time. I hate the Johnny-come-lately additions because then we don't really get to know much about it. We view it out here and then we don't get to think it through and try to respond to it, even though I know it's within your procedure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to address the council on resolutions tonight? Again, anyone like to speak to any of the resolutions tonight? Third final time. Anyone like to speak to resolutions tonight that has not? Seeing no one else, I declare citizen comment closed. Thank you.
New business, number 1, relative to setting the first and second public hearings on the budget for fiscal year 21-22.
Motion, please, to bring the resolution forward. Alderwoman Gould, second Alderwoman Miles. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
So the only thing that I will say, and I've already, I've pretty much reiterated this since last year, is accessibility. And I know we're doing this in person now, but of course there are limits, of course, space-wise, looking at it in here as it is now. And so the only thing that I would like us to consider specifically for these dates is the opportunity for individuals to utilize a phone service or something for the purpose of addressing the council for the proposed budget. You know, and I say that for 2 reasons. You know, one, not everyone is vaccinated. We have people, of course, still haven't had appointments who aren't comfortable yet coming in large settings. So I'm very cognizant and aware of that. The second piece is, you know, there are those that, you know, may not be used to coming in this setting, and quite frankly, with this setup, it's hard for someone to come in and do it for the first time. So, you know, having the method of someone being able to call in, email, mail letters, as we did during COVID, provides additional layers of accessibility to government transparency. And for me, it's just providing those opportunities. That's one thing that COVID has allowed us to see is opportunities where we can enhance how we reach the olive branch of government to each and every citizen. So that's just something to consider as we move forward with these important public hearings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? I would only point out that most of those items are still available, and all of us do receive emails and phone calls, and I would encourage people to follow through on what you said. Yes, Alderman Nash.
With that being said, sir, with the email situation, I had an individual come up and say that some of us are not answering and that they're sure they're getting emails. I'm concerned because I am not getting this person's emails. So if I'm not getting hers, I wonder how many other citizens I may not be getting. So I will be reaching out to John and Leon tomorrow to find out exactly what the situation is, because I do get emails, but I don't get some emails, obviously. So I need to figure out what that is. So please, if anyone's out there listening, email me, and hopefully I get it, but I'll find out tomorrow why I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you. No other comments? Please, the vote.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 2, relative to a donation of surplus inventory items by Chelsea Groton Savings Bank.
Motion, please bring it forward. Alderman Wilson, second Alderwoman Miles. Is there discussion? Yes, Alderman Wilson.
I just, it's another thing of appreciating Chelsea Groton Bank, Savings Bank for all that they do for the community. These are small things that go a long way, so definitely a thank you to them.
Thank you, sir. Is there further discussion? Just for the public record, I received a call from the branch manager on West Main Street, and that is how these donations took place. I checked them with the city manager, and some of our city departments directly are benefited by receiving these furniture pieces that otherwise might have actually been tossed. So we thank them very much. Vote, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 3, relative to the purchase of 33 East Cliff Street.
Motion, please, to bring Resolution 3 forward. Alderwoman Miles, second Alderwoman Gould. And for members of council, I have language to amend and recommend to you to fill in the blanks of the resolution before you. Could I have a motion, please, to accept that amendment? Alderman Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. In paragraph 3, after the word "sum of," please insert $45,000. And following in paragraph 4, again, the first blank is $45,000. The next blank, I'm going to spell this word for you. Capital M-A-H-A, K-A-S-H-Y, A-P-A, Capital Group, LLC, 511 West 152nd Street. That is number 2, New York, New York.
What? 511?
LLC 511 at West 152nd Street, number 2 in New York, New York. And the final blanks, again, capital M-A-H-A, K-A-S-H-Y-A-P-A, Capital Group LLC. Uh, That would be of, well, that's all that's provided in the amendment.
The address.
It would be the same address, West 152nd Street, number 2, New York, New York. Is there a discussion on the amendment offered? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment provided? Thank you. On the resolution as amended, is there further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 4, relative to convey the property to the state of Connecticut in connection with the Sherman Street Bridge project.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderman Nash, second, Alderwoman Gould. Is there discussion? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 5, relative to granting an easement and right-of-way to St. Vincent de Paul Place, Norwich, located at 8 Claremont Street Extension.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. Alderwoman Gould, second, Alderwoman Miles. Is there discussion? Yes, President Pro Tem.
For council, I mentioned this at agenda setting. I know you have issues, but the problem I have is the easement doesn't spell out the usage. So by granting an easement of this nature, aren't we going to allow for an easement for any purpose?
In the third paragraph,
Is it?
it says for its HVAC system and a condenser for its walk-in cooler freezer on a concrete pad.
Okay. My bad.
We're good.
All right, that's fine. That was my concern.
Is there further discussion? If not,
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles? Yes. Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 6, relative to reallocating amounts among the downtown revitalization program purposes.
Motion, please, to bring this forward. President Pro Tem Bettencourt, Alderwoman Miles is the second. Is there discussion? Yes.
Just in answer to the question regarding the timing, there's a couple issues at hand. One being that some opportunities have come up with the marina, but the second is more specific to the program that's being reallocated from ends at the end of this month. So we really couldn't, we couldn't put it off either. So it was necessary to get this resolution authorized as soon as possible. That's really the driving force here. Otherwise, it could have waited.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? Okay.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
New business ordinances. An ordinance relative to the appropriation for the city of Norwich and the city and town consolidation districts of said city for fiscal year 21-22.
Motion, please. Alderman Wilson, second by Alderman Nash. Michael, As far as the public hearings are already scheduled, do you want us to exclude the dates as listed in the calendar?
I'll put those in.
Pardon me?
It's this resolution, this ordinance, but I'll put in the dates again.
Yeah, we have the dates here in the schedule. I think it would be helpful if they were included.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, can I ask again who first made the motion and seconded it?
Wilson and Nash.
I second.
Thank you, sorry.
You got it both? Okay,
Do you want to do roll call?
please.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Number 2, an ordinance concerning the tax levies on the list of October 1st, 2020.
Motion, please, bring this forward. Alderwoman Miles, second Alderwoman Gould.
Alderman DeLucia?
Yes.
Alderman Miles?
Yes.
Alderman Wilson?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Nash?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt?
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom?
Yes.
That's 7-0. Number 3, an ordinance amending ordinance 1714 adopted February 17, 2015, and subsequently amended by ordinance 1785 adopted May 18, 2020, pertaining to the adaptive reuse and rehabilitation of the historic Panema Mills to clarify that Mill Building Number 1 was developed in 3 phases and that the tax abatement related to the property, real property improvements.
Motion to schedule for a public hearing and waive the full text and reading. Second meeting in April 19th. Alderman Nash, second Alderwoman Gould. Roll, please.
Discussion?
What?
Excuse me?
You have the absolute right to raise a point. Go right ahead.
My situation with this ordinance,
Look, this is actually for scheduling a public
yeah.
hearing.
Okay.
We're not debating the ordinance here.
well, so that, when can I refer it back to the Commission on the City Plan for their approval?
That would be following a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes. Yep. Okay. Pardon me?
No, we would do it before.
We can make it as part of the motion itself.
You're not changing any of the abatements, you're clarifying
What was already done.
phasing structure. So it's already been referred to the Commission on the City Plan previously with respect to the outstanding ordinance. So I think you could schedule it as early as April 19th.
That was the motion that I spoke of. Your reference is, in fact, that this was done previously prior years. What this does, this is kind of a housekeeping, a technical ordinance that we're asking to be considered adopted to clarify the prior actions. I believe that's what you're talking about. This isn't anything new.
That's my understanding. that
Yep.
You're not changing the nature of the abatements that
No.
were previously granted. You're indicating, though, that the phase-in is based on the phase structure versus the building structure. There was some question as to the different buildings, the street addresses changed, et cetera. So I think it's in the context of a clarifying ordinance as opposed to a ordinance establishing new
Correct.
tax abatement.
That is correct. The motion before us is to hold a public hearing on the 19th of April. If there is no objection to that. Alderman DeLucia, please.
I was just going to say, are we still in discussion?
Normally, no, but since this is somewhat unique, because
Yes.
we're not creating new law through this, we're simply clarifying prior actions and clearing up some ambiguities between probably the assessor's office and everyone else.
Well, then I'd like to be able to finish my point.
Again, the appropriate time to make the referral would be after the public hearing. That's my understanding.
Council,
Or you can make it as part of the motion itself, that we refer it to them, ask them to hold a special meeting between now and the 19th. If they can't do that, then we will postpone any final action on this.
I mean, I think you probably want the opinion of the planner as to whether or not it can be, when it can be done, if it needs to be done.
I guess I would like some clarification from Alderman Gould about number 3 of why you feel it needs to go back to the commission on the city plan regarding the clarification for the abatement that's already been granted on this one.
Okay,
Just so I know why it would be going to them, would that be okay to ask that question?
okay, so my concern is, the original Phase 4 and Phase 5 project was approved back in 2010.
Oh, that's the number 4, Alderman Gould. We're on number 3.
Yeah, I was trying to tell you
I think the
You have mixed up.
confusion is the number 3 and number 4.
Never mind.
Am I correct?
that. Yes, I think so.
So number 3 is a clarification of the, already the rehab for the
Okay, yes, I'm
abatement for the
sorry.
North Mill, okay?
Forgive me.
And for the record, the commission already weighed in on those prior actions.
I believe they did, I mean, a long time, but again, it was in 2015 originally, and then in 2020. So there was just some clarification that needed because of the numbering of the buildings, and they changed the phase numbers and things like that, so it got a little confusing, and the assessor was interpreting it differently than what I believe the original intention was for that abatement that was granted in 2015. Is that fair to say? I think that's about what we kind of talked about.
I'm not sure I could clarify it as a misinterpretation by the assessor. I think the assessor's correct in the issue that's in dispute.
Yes.
But the idea is to show the phasing structure by which the project was done in the event there is a need for clarification.
So this is this is the North Mill, just to clarify, okay?
Not the south.
Thank you. Again, the motion before us is to hold a public hearing on the 19th, the second meeting of this month. Is there further concerns?
Alderman DeLucia.
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles.
Yes.
Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Nash.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt.
yes.
Mayor Nystrom.
Yes.
7-0.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Number 4, an ordinance providing for the abatement of real estate taxes on real property improvements and the waiver of building permit fees for the historic redevelopment and/or reuse of the Panema Mill Building Number 2, also known as 555 and 557 Norwich Avenue.
Again, I'd ask for a motion to,
Hold on,
575.
okay, thank you. I was going to.
Sorry. Also known as 555 and 575 Norwich Avenue.
thank you. Again, I entertain a motion to raise this for public hearing, waive the full text and reading, and in the same motion, ask for the referral. Commission on City Plan, if that's the wish of members. All in one motion. Questions? Deanna, are there any CCP meetings scheduled between now and the 19th? I doubt it.
The 20th.
Yes. So then, first meeting in May?
That would be May 3rd.
So that would be for May 3rd.
That's your budget hearing, though.
I understand.
Okay, sorry.
Yes, Alderman DeLucia.
So the motion's on the floor?
The motion is to raise for public hearing, waive the full text and reading, refer to the commission for a public hearing to be held on May 3rd. Please.
I'll
Pro
make a
Tem.
motion.
Second, Alderwoman Miles. Okay. Further, yes.
In that motion, is there also are we referring to Commission on the
Yes.
City Plan?
It's all inclusive.
Okay, so I have a discussion item on that, just on that point.
Certainly.
My question is, Commission on the City Plan has already reviewed this as a project, and that
Okay.
it fits into our conservation, our plan for conservation and development?
So, yes and no. So the project was approved in 2010, and it was a 5-year approval, and it expired would have expired in 2015. Our regulations allow for an extension of that approval. So they asked for an extension, I believe it was in May of 2020, I believe is when it was granted. And that was an extension so that they could basically have an approval in place. But they made it very clear that the project that was approved back in 2010, excuse me, was for commercial, for warehousing and offices. But my understanding is that project now is a residential project. We have not seen that project yet. So the previous approval, even though it's been extended, there's an extension on it, is not, it's kind of moot in a way, because that's not what their intention is, to build out that design at all. That had a parking garage and had other different elements to it. And that was just kind of a placeholder to go for that, to hold that for the extension. So that's kind of where we're at. So we don't have an accurate approval for a project right now. That's an approval that they could build out that project, but that, from my understanding, is that is not the intention to build out the approval that was originally granted.
Under the statute and with respect to our ordinance, the commission of the city plan is to determine whether or not they are entitled to the abatement and that the restoration will be fitting within the historic character of the property. So that's really the purpose of the referral to the commission of the city plan with respect to this particular ordinance.
So I would say that that's going to be difficult to determine, because we don't know what that project is going to look like, because the project is changing from what was originally approved. So, and I know that it's changing because I've spoke with the engineer and the project manager, which is Phil Biondo, about what their proposal is for, they're going for grant funds for cleanup and things, and what their intention is there. So it's a little difficult to try to go forward, I think, with a request for an abatement on a project that we're not quite sure is what it is, that final thing is. And my understanding from the assessor on another project was that she said she would not move forward with doing an assessment deferral unless it was a final plan approved by the commission and the city plan, that she would look at the architectural layouts and the floor plans and come up with those numbers and work on it. And that was her opinion on another project just recently. And it was another mill project in the city that wanted to get a 15-year assessment deferral for under the mill. And we were told that they could not come forward until they had their final approval again, because they're revising their plan. So I just don't know, if we want to be equitable in how we're doing this, with this other mill project.
So I have 3 issues with this particular ordinance. First is that if the project has substantially changed from its original intent that was reviewed by the Commission on the City Plan and was determined to fit into our plan of conservation and development. Now that project is completely done. Completely changed, right? As you said, transitioned into mostly residential. Okay, so the CCP is going to take it up all over again then?
Oh, absolutely. That was just a placeholder to not lose their original approval, to have some approval in place. And again, it would be till 2024. So it was kind of like, we just want this approval just to have a placeholder.
Okay.
And
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is already going to be a long meeting.
No.
So my other 2 issues are, A, why are we talking about a tax abatement to a project that hasn't gotten CCP approval yet in its new reconstituted form? And B, why would we even refer to the Commission on the City Plan an ordinance that talks about tax abatement? That's our providence. That doesn't go before the Commission on the City Plan. They don't weigh in on what gets tax abatement and what doesn't.
That would be Attorney Driscoll to answer that question.
That's by the state statute and by the ordinance that we've adopted incorporating that.
So, and I'll make this point and I will yield the floor. This goes back to what Alderman Nash said earlier about the cart and the horse. Where are we here, right? We're talking about a tax abatement on a project that has not been approved by the Commission on the City Plan in its most recent form.
In its most recent form, yes. And again, they could build out but that is not what my understanding is, that they were going to build out that design that was approved back in 2010.
Understood.
And we haven't seen any application yet.
Thank you.
Alderman Gould.
Okay, so maybe what we need to do here is postpone the action on an abatement for 555 Norwich Avenue and 575 Norwich Avenue until the project has been vetted by the CCP. And then once the project has been vetted at whatever time and date they vet the project, then it will go through the proper channels of going to the assessor for her determination as to whether or not it meets the standard for any type of abatement, and then it can come back to us. We have to have the same standard. If we did this before for another historic mill project that they had to go to the CCP, then to the assessor, then to the council, we have to hold this developer and any other developers to that same standard. Get your approval from CCP to the assessor, to the council, if you're looking to take advantage of any of our deferrals or abatement programs. So I would like to make a motion that we postpone action on number 4 to a later date.
Personally, I think it'd be cleaner if we simply not raise it for public hearing and it goes away on its own. We don't know when and if those other actions will take place, to know when the next later date for ourselves will take place, and it will be lingering out there. It would be cleaner to simply not raise this for public hearing, which is the right of this body.
I think the council.
Well, the
I
council.
think there's some funding issues with respect to this in terms of the timing, that they are applicants for a number of financial items with the state and the federal government with respect to this, and I think there are some timing concerns. I don't know precisely what they are, but I think the application has to be in April, so this is part of that process going forward.
You're correct. They are applying for a grant for brownfield remediation to the Department of Economic Development. That is actually due in 2 days.
So,
Yes, President Pro Tem.
If I might suggest something, I think for the sake of the grant application, it needs to stay on the table, so to speak, and be in process. So that's my understanding of it anyway. If we take it off now, they've got, nothing. So I'm going to suggest that we schedule a process that's on the table right now, and we cannot take action on it at that point. If there's something that's unresolved that we're not comfortable with, then we just don't take action on it. But in the meantime, we keep the process moving forward at this point. So, I mean, it's going to have to go before the commission and the city plan. This is going to go before the commission and the city plan. Do you know when they're going to be prepared to present their proposal, or?
no, they have not provided us anything. So, I mean, they're going for the money for the cleanup is what they're asking for, the remediation funds from the state of Connecticut. And then, so it doesn't mean that they can't come in with an application while they're doing cleanup and all that. But I spoke with their engineer not too long ago, and he says they were working on the proposal, but we have not seen it, And when we did the grant assessment, for the assessment grant with them for the DECD that we received for environmental assessment, it was for a commercial project and not a residential project. It was going to be for commercial development there. And after that was completed, they had done their due diligence and determined that it was more financially feasible to do a residential project there than a commercial project. So they had to do some work to modify their environmental that we got, the assessment that we did.
Okay. I mean, my only concern here is that we screw up a grant application for the applicant. So I would, for the time being, allow this to stay in process. And then, but I'm not interested in passing it before it's time. Let's
Well,
just say.
I can reach out to their attorney, Attorney Luke Hoffman, and tell them, if you do keep it on your agenda, that, the policy is that you need to come forward and get an approval from the commission on the city plan before we do an assessment deferral.
I think that would be needed before this ordinance could.
Well, I was just aware of this tonight. I didn't even know that this was happening tonight till I looked at the agenda, and I was kind of surprised that it was up for.
The only real reason is because of that grant application, I think. So.
If I might expound on what our pro tem has shared, the grants are competitive. You're competing with other cities and towns across the state, and there are a limited number of funds for brownfield remediation in each calendar year. An applicant does, in fact, score points for having this kind of discussion going forward before the local government. And that's why it did come forward. They're hoping to gain a higher score to finish in the running and actually receive the grant. This property applied for a brownfield grant previously and was denied. We also used a $200,000 state grant, and within that was a marketing study which was allowed, and that's what showed that the commercial retail would not be sustainable in this site, which caused them to shift gears now towards residential. That's the history of it. There's a motion before us. It's the majority pleasure. Call the roll, I guess.
Can you repeat the?
The motion was to raise for public hearing, waive the full text reading, refer to the Commission on the City Plan as well for their comment.
And come back May 3rd.
And to be back here, yes. Which does not require that we take final action on that date either. It just has to come back here for a public hearing. And it's still within the prerogative of this council at that date. Yes, Alderman Wilson.
So my only question would be, even moving forward, once, of course, since there is nothing really yet, and there was a public hearing, of course, I went to the Commission on the City Plan, there could be other public hearings scheduled down the road once we have pretty much the plan in place of what they plan on doing.
That would be required.
Okay.
Yes.
Alderman DeLucia.
Yes?
Alderwoman Miles.
Yes.
Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Nash.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt.
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom.
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
I hereby move pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-200, subsection 6, that the members of the Norwich City Council go into an executive session for the purpose of discussing strategies and negotiations with respect to collective bargaining. The following shall be asked to participate during all or portions of this executive session at the request of the City Council. City Manager John Salamone. Director of Human Resources Bridget Marks. Fire Chief Tracy Montoya. Finance Director Josh Pothier, and Corporation Counsel Michael Driscoll. I hereby further move pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, Section 1-200, subsection 6, that the members of the Norwich City Council continue in executive session for the purpose of discussing the acquisition or disposition of real estate or interest in real estate when publicly regarding the site and the acquisition or disposition of interest in the same would adversely impact the price of the same, to review preliminary drafts of proposals pertaining to the use of the properties. The council having determined that the public interest in withholding such clearly outweighs the public interest in disclosing at this time, and to review commercial or financial information given in confidence not required by statute. City Manager John Salamone, Finance Director Josh Pothier, and Corporation Counsel Michael Driscoll shall be asked to participate during all or portions of this executive session at the request of the City Council.
Is there a second? Alderwoman Miles. Well,
Alderman DeLucia.
Yes.
Alderwoman Miles.
Yes.
Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Alderwoman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Nash.
Yes.
President Pro Tem Bettencourt.
Yes.
Mayor Nystrom.
Yes.
That's 7-0.
Motion passes 7-0.
Motion to come out of
Motion to
executive-
return, please. Council come back to order. Let the record show no votes were taken in executive session. Motion made by Pres Pro Tem Mark Bettencourt, second.
Second.
Alderwoman Miles. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We're back in session.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Second. Gould, Miles. All those in favor? Aye. Good night.
Good night.